Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here to a facts, stats, trivia, and a top 10 for the bug typing. So first off, we're going to look at the typing matchups, both defensively and offensively for the bug typing. And offensively, we don't do that great. We have 3 typings that we hit super effective, Dark, Grass, and Psychic, but we have a ton of resistances. Fairy, Fighting, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Poison, and Steel, and that was a lot more difficult to say than it sounds. Defensively though, we are balanced in our weaknesses and resistances. Flying, Rock, Fire for the weaknesses, Fighting, Ground, and Grass for the resistances. Then the rest are going to be neutral hits with no immunities. When we break down the rankings of the bug typing is the worst typing for average base stat totals, and we can see right here, we're last in hit points, we're last in total stats, and nothing goes into the top 10 of other types for any of its stats. Now this is actually fairly unusual because when we look at the bug types, there's going to be 3 bug Pokemon that are actually the top 10 fastest Pokemon in the entire game. We have Mega Beedrill, we have Accelgor, and we have Ninjask, and the only other typing that can do this is Psychic. It also has 3 Pokemon that are in the top 10 for the fastest Pokemon. And then for other Pokemon that have interesting stats, we have Shedinja with 1 hit point, the lowest hit points out of all Pokemon, but this isn't really trivia, we already knew this. If we want to look at legendaries, there is only 1 legendary Pokemon in the bug typing, and that's going to be Genesect. Other than that, we also have it to where it is the 6th common typing. So 9.4% of Pokemon are going to be the bug typing, and that kind of shows that unless you're in like the elite of bug type Pokemon, your stats are going to be absolutely near the bottom for fully evolved Pokemon, and it brings down the stats. So there's this huge gap between the really, really good bug type Pokemon and the not so good bug Pokemon stat-wise. Another crazy thing about bug type stats is that bug type Pokemon are in the top 2 for many different stats. Ninjask is the 2nd fastest Pokemon, Shuckle has the 2nd highest defense and highest special defense in the game, and then Heracross has the 2nd highest attack in the game. So going off the base stats, certain bug type Pokemon do really, really well. Other than that, we can look at abilities. Compound Eyes, Swarm, and Shield Dust can only be on bug type Pokemon for an ability. All of them were introduced in the 3rd generation. One of the more interesting things about the bug typing is that while there are a lot of flying and bug Pokemon, because insects generally like that with wings, we look at Volcarona and Genesect, a bug fire and a bug steel Pokemon, yet these are the only 2 bug Pokemon that can learn the move Fly. That just doesn't make sense, but there it is, right there for you guys. If we're keeping on weird typing things, Surskit is an interesting Pokemon. It has a unique typing that it actually loses. So Surskit's the only bug and water type Pokemon, but when it evolves into Masquerain, it becomes a bug flying. That's something that really doesn't happen, so that's another interesting little bit of trivia. And the last little bit of fun trivia about the bug typing is that Poison was actually weak to bug type attacks in the 1st generation, which caused it to have the most common 4 times weakness in the game. 11 Pokemon were 4 times weak to Bug. That's pretty crazy. Now remember when I said that Bug has a ton of resisted hits? That just kind of shows that when we match it up against all other Pokemon in the game, 276 of those Pokemon are going to resist just a raw Bug type move, making it very bad for giving coverage. If we want to combo that with other typings, you know, Bug and Ice, that still makes it pretty bad. Bug, Ice, and Electric is where we start getting into a better realm. Whenever we just tag it along with random stuff, it feels like we're always going to have a not very effective hit, unless it's generic stuff like Bullpeam, which has 5 not very effective hits to begin with, or Ghost and Fighting, which actually has none in just those 2. So of course adding Bug to that is going to make it actually not really that much better, that we gain a couple more super effective moves. So it's going to be really hard to use a bug type Pokemon offensively as a coverage sweeper because it just doesn't get along with so many things. Now let's get to the moment you have all been waiting for with the top 10 bug type Pokemon, and we're going to start the list with Mega Heracross, and just Heracross in general because it is a very powerful Pokemon. So Heracross has the 2nd highest attack in the game just by being a Mega Pokemon, and its only real fault is going to be having a lot of weaknesses and not the greatest amount of speed. However, with the Skill Link ability and just access to many Skill Link moves, it's going to be able to obliterate pretty much everything in its way. We get moves like Bullet Seed, well that's going to be grass coverage. We also get Pin Missile, that's going to be stab bug coverage, and all these are going to hit 5 times, so Skill Link. We're getting a stab 125 base power move that has 95 accuracy and no drawbacks, while also breaking Focus Sash and making it to where they can't really do much to protect around it. We can run the close combat, that's going to be a huge amount of power as well, and then we can even throw in a Rock Blast for more coverage. So with all these moves, we're getting very high amounts of base power, great amounts of coverage, and that's going to be pretty powerful. Regular Heracross can be run with a Scarf and just go for ridiculous close combat stab absurdity HP and damage, and it's just a huge amount of damage pressure overall. Put it in a Trick Room, give it some speed support, and this Pokemon can really go to town, but it's only number 10 on the list because there are a lot of weaknesses, and if you don't really get it over that speed hump, it's going to be a liability at times. Next up for number 9, we have another Mega Pokemon, and that is going to be Mega Beedrill. Mega Beedrill has a ridiculous amount of power, and everything about its kit just keeps adding on to that power and making it even more powerful, like adaptability. Adaptability is going to make it to where its stab moves, same type attack moves, are going to have 2 times the amount of damage instead of 1.5. So it's like every hit is a super effective hit, unless you're doing actual super effective hits. Then it even gets coverage on top of that. So you can run things like Knock Off and Drill Run for that ground type coverage, and then you get dual stab. That's pretty powerful with like Poison Jab and the huge amount of adaptability with the huge amount of power. Pretty much you're going to be an incredible coverage sweeper with a ridiculous amount of speed. Like with a 145 base speed, you don't even need a Jolly Nature, and you already outspeed tons of Pokemon. If you decide to go for Jolly, you outspeed a lot of Scarf, and if you go for Adamant, that's just absurd amounts of power. The adaptability, 150 base power Adamant, just destroys almost anything, and that's going to be pretty powerful, especially if you can sneak in a super effective hit. The only drawback to Mega Beedrill is going to be these incredibly weak defenses. I mean, 65 base hit points and 80 special defense isn't that much, and you also do need the Protect, because on that turn you Mega Evolve, you're not going to have an incredible amount of speed. So unless you play an incredibly risky game and come in on the perfect setup, then you're going to need that Protect. If not, you get incredible amounts of coverage. So there are some trades with this Pokemon that need to be made, and it's incredibly frail, and if it gets burned, it's going to pretty much be game over. But the amount of potential this Pokemon has is off the charts. Number 8, I'm going to put Galvantula at number 8 on the list because it's the best Pokemon that can set up Sticky Web. I'm just going to say it because you have a lot of speed, you can run Focus Sash on it, it's a very safe lead, and with the Compound Eyes ability, accuracy multiplied means you get access to Thunder. Thunder is going to be a really powerful stab move that doesn't have 70% accuracy anymore, goes over 90%, so it becomes fairly reliable, and then you get good amounts of coverage. You can just kind of run whatever with Galvantula, and mostly it's just going to be Sticky Web, damage conversion, one of the best Pokemon for setting that up, and Sticky Web can arguably be one of the best setups in the game because it lowers the speed of grounded foes by 1. Well, that's going to make Pokemon like Heracross have a lot of effective power. It's going to give a lot of slower Pokemon, even Pokemon the 100 base speed range, it's just going to turn them into sweepers, and if they were lacking that speed, that if they're pretty frail, then Sticky Web changes the game. So forces your opponent to remove it, or it sets you up for an incredible sweep, and Galvantula can cover with damage as well. If you go Sticky Webs, they go for Stealth Rocks or some kind of other setup, then you back-to-back Thunder them because you still have your Focus Sash and you're good to go, and you can even carry the Sucker Punch. So you carry priority to counter their Focus Sash while running good amounts of speed and everything else. It just has a lot of good options. You can run singles, doubles. It's a very high utility Pokemon. It's not going to sweep and win you games, but it's going to set up a very good victory. Number 7, I'm going to put Accelgor at number 7 on this list because it's a pretty ridiculous Pokemon as well. Very high amounts of speed. We see that 145 base speed again, and we have a good amount of special attack. So we can Life Orb into a lot of coverage on this Pokemon. We can run it as just a huge gimmick. I mean, Final Gambit. Accelgor is one of the best Final Gambit Pokemon in the game, and it can effectively make the game a 5 versus 5. So you can use it as a good out, that if you don't like the situation you're in, you can just kind of outspeed your opponent, remove a huge threat, Final Gambit, boom, now you trade a potential Mega for an Accelgor, or you also have high amounts of damage and coverage with absurd amounts of speed. In the late game, Accelgor can clean up very easily. You give it a Life Orb, you just outspeed everything naturally, and then you go and find easy finishes on a lot of Pokemon. Interestingly enough, number 6 on this list is going to be Escavalier, the counterpart to Accelgor. Now, I'm putting Escavalier here on the list because it's kind of the opposite idea of Accelgor, but it pressures so hard. Escavalier puts out absurd amounts of damage, and it's incredibly slow, so it's really easy to put on a Trick Room team, has a very high amount of tankiness, and it has the Bug Steel typing, which is arguably one of the best in the game. Only 4 times weak against fire and has a ton of resistances. So pretty much this Pokemon can tank hits all day long. You just max out hit points, max out the attack. Very easy to do, and then you just give it an Adamant Nature. Boom, tons of damage right there. Iron Head, that's going to obliterate tons of Pokemon. You also get access to Drill Run, so you get ground coverage. Pretty much you become the ultimate coverage tank. You take a hit, you deal a stronger hit back, and you're good to go. You can slap on Assault Vest, Life Orb. If you want to do Choice Band is actually very interesting because with the Choice Band, you're able able to get even more damage. You can start finding neutral KOs with things like Mega Horn. So yeah, you get absurd amounts of damage. Mega Horn, Stab, Choice Band with the 135 attack. You're going to be able to one-hit KO Pokemon. You switch out into something safe, and you just bring it back in. And it's the ultimate revenge Pokemon because of its coverage, because of its tankiness, and if it needs to sit in and fight, it's a 3-hit KO Pokemon, while it's at least 2-hit KOing everything back. So it's a very reliable thing. You just have to play around fire, and since people use Ferrothorn a lot, it's really easy to put in a Flash Fire Pokemon or something that heavily resists fire, and then ultimate support this Escavalier to make it an absolutely destructive force. Next up, for number 5 on this list, I'm putting Yanmega. Yanmega is a ridiculous Pokemon. Speed Boost. You Speed Boost, you just run Protect and Coverage, and now nothing can stop you. Life Orb Protect on this coverage. It's going to be a very awesome Pokemon in a lot of situations. You do have that 116 special attack, so you run the Modest Nature, and really it doesn't matter after that. You just kind of use Protect, you set up one Speed Boost, you outspeed your opponent's entire team, and then you go for good amounts of coverage. You have the Air Slash, that's going to give a good amount of stab. We get the Bug Buzz for damage, and then we can just kind of mix it up. I've seen people run the Ancient Power. I've seen all kinds of things. You can go for the Giga Drain. Now here's the thing about Bug-type Pokemon. A lot of Bug Flying are going to have this same thing right here. You're going to get your Flying move, your Bug move, and then a Giga Drain, and that's going to work out pretty well. So Yanmega, it's not going to be absolutely absurd because it's not finding super duper amounts of one-hit KOs, but just that it can answer to almost any of your opponent's Pokemon with speed does make it a very terrifying Pokemon. And again, as a late game cleanup Pokemon, or if you lead it with coverage, it's going to be very powerful, and it will be something that your opponent will have to deal with at some point. And if they can't, then it's going to be a pretty easy victory for you. Number 4 is going to be Mega Pinsir. So as we can see, a lot of Bug-type Pokemon got a lot of Mega Evolutions, and it made them really viable. I mean, Beedrill, no one would have ever considered Beedrill before, and it's really good. Same with Pinsir, except Pinsir gets an insane Mega, so it gets the Aerialate ability. Aerialate is going to give you ridiculous amounts of power. It turns all of your normal type moves into flying types, give it 30% more damage, so it's like a free life orb, while also getting stab, and our attack goes through the roof to 155 on the attack, and then we get 105 speed. So we outspeed a lot of Pokemon in the game, we outdamage them, and then we can just kind of run a move like Return. Return is going to give us crazy damage because that's a normal move, going to go into stab with the Aerialate boost with that high amounts of damage. That's awesome. You can run the Swords Dance. Swords Dance is going to give us even more power. We have Close Combat. Now here's the thing, we have a huge weakness to rocks, and we have a lot of weaknesses in general, so running the Close Combat doesn't really hurt for our defenses, just gives us that little bit of extra coverage, because, well, we're resisted by Steel and Rock-type Pokemon, so we use Close Combat, and then we hit them super effective instead, and then we also get the Feint. Now, Feint or Quick Attack, depending on which one you want to run, is going to be ridiculous. I prefer Quick Attack in singles and Feint in doubles, because in doubles, you can just have this priority move that makes where your opponent's protection strategy just falls apart, and they take huge amounts of damage. The Quick Attack might not seem like a lot, but if you get a Swords Dance or two and you go into Quick Attacks, well, it's getting boosted into so much damage that now you're actually finding one-hit KOs off of Quick Attack on squishier Pokemon, or if not, you're just returning and close combating them to the face. So Mega Pinsir sets up some really ridiculous sweeping power, and that's going to be why it's number 3 on the list. Alright, now we're getting into the serious Pokemon when it comes to bug types. Number 3, I'm putting Scolipede on the list because this Pokemon is one of the most devastating Pokemon in the game. It gets Speed Boost as well. So Speed Boost on Scolipede means it's going to start finding crazy outspeeds, but it also gets that Baton Pass, and it's one of the... And I would say it's the most reliable Baton Pass Speed Boost Pokemon in the game because you have a good typing and you're fairly defensive if you just want to max invest in defense and kind of cut your losses right there. So you can tank up a lot of things, you can Baton Pass speed, you also can Baton Pass Iron Defense. So by Baton Passing defenses, if you're going up against an opponent that's has a lot of physical Pokemon, or if you bring in Scolipede on a physical Pokemon as a revenge, then there's nothing they can do. You protect, now you outspeed them, you Iron Defense, now they're not going to be able to damage you, and then you can go for whatever setup, like a Swords Dance. So you Swords Dance, Speed, Iron Defense, and you give that to a Pokemon, and now you're pretty much granting any Pokemon on your team the ultimate setup. It's going to be faster than everything, if it's physical, which you pretty much need. Swords Dance is going to be insane, and your opponent can't respond to it physically. so you just get to blow up everything in your way. Now you can also run Scolipede offensively. You set up that Swords Dance for yourself, 100 base attack with that speed boost is going to be really nice. You get moves like Mega Horn, Poison Jab, so you can go offensive, you can go Baton Pass. There's a lot of things that this Pokemon can do, and that's what makes it so strong. It really changes the game when it enters the field because you need to respond to it quick, and even the worst case scenario, you protect into a Baton Pass, and there's really no counterplay to that. So Scolipede is going to be pretty ridiculous. Next up on this list, I'm going to put Scizor. Scizor at number 2. It's just such a good Pokemon. Has that legendary Bug Steel typing, like I mentioned earlier, that you're going to be able to really not have to worry about much. Only Fire-type attacks, and as I've mentioned, those can be dealt with. Other than that, you get ridiculous synergy on your moveset. So Technician, moves with 60 base power or less have 50% more power. Then you just slap on Bullet Punch and Swords Dance. So now we're going to be doubling our attack, we're going to get that Technician boost, we're getting the Bullet Punch stab boost, and then we can even run something like a Life Orb, and now we can actually find one-hit KOs off of a priority move, similar to Pinsir, and we also have 130 attack. So we're still really bulky. I mean, 100 on defense, 80 on the special defense, really incredible typing, and then we just Swords Dance in the Bullet Punch, and we watch all the opponents go away. Not to mention, we also get Defog, so we can clear hazards, and Roost, so if they're not two-hit KOing us, we can heal through it, and then keep throwing out Bullet Punches in something that they can't respond to. Very few Pokemon are going to be able to respond to this, and that's pretty awesome for Scizor. So the way that it can just set up and run away with the battle is absolutely unreal, and it feels like it's a Pokemon that's always relevant and always does ridiculous things when it hits the field. Now before we get to the number 1 Bug-type Pokemon, I'm going to put in some honorable mentions like Ninjask. I feel that since we have Scolipede on the list, we can't really put Ninjask on the list because Scolipede outclasses it, and I want to give those other Pokemon a little bit of props as well. Also Shedinja, it's a really risky Pokemon, but can still combo into some really fun stuff. Pretty much any of the Quiver Dance butterflies, they could have made the list realistically. They set up a Quiver Dance, and they can find some good sweeps, or they can go into something like Sleep Powder and really set up a lot of devastation. Illumise, I think Illumise is a really strong prankster Pokemon, but it's very, very specific to use, and even a Pokemon like Shuckle. Shuckle could have made the list. Very tanky, but I feel that with the way the metagame is gone, Shuckle would have made this list 5th or 4th generation. Now that we're in the 6th generation, there's just a lot more threats, and it feels like we don't see Shuckle doing as much as it used to back in the day because of that power creep, and I would even put Genesect on this list maybe. Normally my list doesn't include mythical legendaries or legendary Pokemon, but since Genesect is the only legendary Pokemon, it could be fair, and it's somewhat balanced compared to other legendaries, but since it's a legendary, I'm still keeping it off the list. Now let's talk about the number 1 Bug-type Pokemon. I have to put Volcarona. Because another reason why the Quiver Dancers didn't make it on the list is because Volcarona is the ultimate Quiver Dancer. Quiver Dance, probably the best move in the game when you look at it. Plus special attack, plus special defense, and speed in one turn. Now, very few Pokemon get this, and Volcarona is the most powerful one. So there are many different ways you can run a Volcarona. That you can run it tanky, set up Quiver Dances, and you're still going to outspeed your opponent eventually. You can run it with defensive investment and like Rocky Helmet or something. So you can wall out physical Pokemon, you set up against special defense Pokemon, then you outspeed and become a sweeper. Pretty much with Volcarona, you last to 2 Quiver Dances, and then you outsweep everything because you get ridiculous amounts of power. Fiery Dance. Fiery Dance has a 50% chance to raise your special attack. You Quiver Dance into Fiery Dance, that procs, well now you're just still one-shotting everything. You get Bug Buzz, you get Psychic, you get Giga Drain, you get all sorts of really good coverage, you get a lot of options. If you want more raw power, you can go with the Heat Wave, or you can even have Flamethrower if you don't want to worry about the accuracy. I mean, 90 base power after 2 Quiver Dances is insane. You can give it Life Orb, Citrus Berry. Like Life Orb max Modest into 1 Quiver Dance is absurd. Citrus Berries, that way you survive for 2 Quiver Dances is insane. It just does a lot of ridiculous things. Has coverage, it can even Roost if it wants to be tanky. It can Rage Powder in doubles. This Pokemon can do it all, and it is one of the most terrifying things. If a Volcarona hits the field and you can't respond to it, that Quiver Dance is going to be GG more than any of their Pokemon on this list. So if you guys enjoyed the video, those are the top 10 Bug-type Pokemon. If you guys like this video, please leave a like and comment down below which typing you want to see in the next video. And most importantly, have a nice day. Thank you for watching.